Please welcome to the stage Ghana's Minister for Railways and Development, the Honourable Joe Ghartey.
I shared a few words with him and he comes up here and says it. I'm glad we didn't spend more time together. He would have told you my whole life. But I'm glad to be here today, and I'm just going to talk about creative funding for infrastructure in Africa, the example of the railway sector in Ghana, and we've just been told by him about the infrastructure gap. And really what we are talking about is how we can fill this infrastructure gap, because we can't borrow. We can't just borrow that amount of money as a country, as a continent, to fund our infrastructure gap. So we must look for money. We must look for innovative ways of funding our infrastructure gap. Or we must raise our hands up and say we failed, but we are not prepared to do that. Now, what it is that the story of the railway in Ghana starts in 1898. And it starts in 1898 when the British brought the railway to the coast of Ghana. They brought the railway to the western region, to Sekondi, precisely because of gold. They wanted to go up and pick the gold and export it. And in those days, they didn't even wash the gold in the Gold Coast. They carried the dirt and everything and washed it in the UK. But what happened also was that cocoa had come into the Gold Coast then in 1876. It came to the eastern part of the Gold Coast, but by 1898 it had started moving to the western part of the Gold Coast. Now we're told this morning of a gentleman who exported cocoa to UK in 1915. And I tell you that the reason why he could export cocoa was because of the railway. Because there's evidence that what happened between 1898, when they started the railway, and 1930, was that Ghana, or the then Gold Coast, became the richest British colony in Africa. And it became the richest British colony in Africa because of cocoa. And it became the world's largest producer of cocoa. And it was all because the peasant farmer saw the train going by and decided to increase his production. And it wasn't because of superior agricultural methods, and I'm happy the agricultural minister is not here so I can say it. It was just because of transportation. And even the British who started it because of gold. But it didn't end with gold. It transferred itself to cocoa. And you can Google and you see research that tells you that. And so why I like this story is that it tells you that all the kind of things that we've talked about today, that great minister, this minister, that minister, if we have transportation, if we're able to move goods and people from place to place, it will transform our economy. And in 2013, a master plan was done. The master plan was done by the previous government, by a previous minister. And Mr. Fosu-Dorte, I worked with him together in the same law firm, and I disagree with that statement he made. And I have to make the point. Sorry, I'm a lawyer. If I disagree with you, I'll tell you. Because we haven't stopped using the 2013 master plan, and it's gone through several ministers. And it's about building strong institutions. And when you build strong institutions, it survives governments and it survives ministers. And the kind of people we are working with today, some of them came into this country in President Kufuor's time in 2008. They worked throughout the NDC period of 8 years with different ministers, and they are still working with me. And I hope they'll continue working in the sector after I've left. But now you have the Railway Master Plan of 2013. When you look at the master plan, everything you see in red below Kumasi is what existed at the time the British left in 1957. When we became independent as a nation, we had 947 kilometers of railway. By 2017, it was only about 100 kilometers left. 58 existed in the western region where it originally started, and it was used mainly to carry manganese from a manganese mine, which is 58 kilometers away from Takoradi to the port. The number of incidents, and the railway people will call it incidents because they don't want to call it derailments. The number of incidents in 2017 was 700. I mean, if a year is 375 and you have 700 incidents, then it's almost 2 a day. But it didn't make the news because the thing that was getting derailed was earth, manganese. So if the train falls down, they pick it up again and put the manganese in, and then continue going. And of course, at that time, I thank God that I was minister then, so we just were hobbling along. We also had a passenger service which was going from Accra, the main city, to Nsawam, and also going from Accra to Achimota. The day that the press went to the passenger service, by some divine providence of God, I also had people from my office in the same passenger service to Nsawam. I was told by 12 o'clock by the technical people that I should close it down. We should close it down because it's a death trap. By 5 o'clock, it was on the news that it was a death trap. And they called me and said, well, I've closed it down. I didn't say I closed it down 4 hours ago. But that's what we had. And by October, the Accra-Tema line also, the train had derailed and everything had come to a standstill. Now, here we had a situation where we had a president who said he was in a hurry, who had set up, this is the first time we've had a railway ministry, and we wanted to build 4,000 kilometers of railway. 4,000 kilometers against a Fiscal Responsibility Act which says that you can only have a deficit of 5%. And even if you calculate it at $5 million per kilometer, and at some places it's more than that, you are talking about $20 billion and above. And so there was no way you can just borrow to build the railway line. I want you to note certain things. I've talked about 1898 and the various things that we've done. But let me go straight to the next slide, where I'll tell you what we've sought to do since then. And let me also warn all of us, or make this point, that I'm not giving an overview of all that we are doing. I'm talking about what we've done in relation to the topic that we are discussing. We have an Eastern line. And the Eastern line runs from Accra to Kumasi. Accra is the capital. Kumasi is the second largest city. Arguably, between Accra and Kumasi, it's about 2/5 of Ghana stays there. That is the busiest passenger corridor. But in addition to that, we also have an inland port in Bonkra, a few miles away from Kumasi. And now we've also have some bauxite in a place called Chebi, near Chebi, where the president comes from. Now, the good thing about that line is that it is an example of creative financing. Because what we did was that we engaged Pricewaterhouse and a few other consultants to see whether we could give out that line on a BOT basis. When I became railway minister, everybody told me everywhere in the world that it won't happen. After a while, I was wondering whether, when I looked at the figures and I thought it could happen, but everybody was telling me it couldn't happen. There was a financial viability gap. How we solved that was that government agreed to take 30% equity in it. So we didn't scupper the whole deal of having a BOT, but what we did was that we have agreed to take 30% of the equity in the project, which then bridges the financial the gap. I tell you something, 45 people started off, about 100 people first showed interest. When we started the processes for procurement, we started with 45 people, we came to around 12, then we ended with 5. We chose a strategic partner. 2 others of the 5 say that they should have been chosen instead. Listen, I'm just a simple lawyer. If we take a decision, you disagree with me, there's nothing to be annoyed about. So there's a process in Ghana where if you disagree with the decision of procurement, you can appeal for administrative review with the procurement authority. And that is where it is now. But what it tells me is that it is possible to do a railway network in Africa on BOT. And it's being done on the Eastern Railway line. The Western Railway line, arguably, today is our richest line. We have the boss of the Ghana, the man who is changing our bauxite and aluminum sector. It's about 300 kilometers, and he tells us that by 2021, we should start moving bauxite to the ports. I mean, if we don't do the Western Railway line, what will happen is that it will be like the end of the world. The number of trucks that will be taking aluminium down to the port through Secondary Takoradi will virtually bring Secondary Takoradi to a standstill. You won't send your kid to school because he may be hit down by one of these aluminium trucks. What we've done is that government has borrowed to fund some bit of the Western Line. 300 kilometers, we borrowed to fund about 100 kilometers of it. The other 200 kilometers, we are going to use creative funding. You can talk to me. I'm still open to listening to ideas, and we'll be here in the afternoon and we can talk to you. But what you have is that by next year, you have an off-taker agreement, which can guarantee for you the amount of freight that you can use to pay for the line if you lend to that project. You can be part of an SPV. I'm not giving you there's not one answer to the problem, but we can create a situation, a vehicle, where the funding will not come from government, and government does not necessarily have to guarantee the funding. This is what we've done so far on the Western Railway line, and we've started the construction of the Western Railway line. It's an asphaltic formation, it's standard gauge. It's not a speed train, it's 160 kilometers per hour. The line is straighter, so there are more bypasses. The contractors tell me this 350-meter viaduct, and for those of you who are not in railway, when a railway person says viaduct, it's just a bridge. And when I became a minister, we'll have all these discussions and say, well, this viaduct. So I was a little too embarrassed to let everybody know that I didn't understand what they were saying. So when one of the engineers became my friend, I called him. I said, what's this viaduct business? So the minister said, it's just a bridge. I said, God bless you. So it's just a bridge. And now what we do is that in some of our magazines, we have a glossary of terms because they cheated me, and I don't want them to cheat anybody again. So we have this 350 meter viaduct that we're doing. And the reason why we are doing the viaduct is that now we have a straighter line. The British, we didn't have a road, so they went to every little village. But we are going 160 kilometers per hour, so must have a straighter line. So we are passing through places that are friendly to a railway. Now, what we are doing also is that we are going to Burkina Faso. The president, when he came, said, I want to get to Paga. We took a trip to Burkina Faso. The Burkina president said, don't end in Paga, come to Ouagadougou. We checked with the financiers and people interested in the project, and it changes or it improves the financial viability of the project by leaps and bounds. We've been told this morning that we are putting money into a new harbor. Well, you have to have a throughput through the harbor. And the good thing about this is that Burkina Faso seems to have agreed that they prefer a harbor to the other harbors, ports around us, the Togo port as well as the Cote d'Ivoire port. And don't forget that they are French-speaking. And all the countries around us are French-speaking, but they've chosen our country. And so we started what we call the Ghana-Burkina Railway Interconnectivity Project. Creative financing. What have we done? Government is taking care of the first 99 kilometers. We've got a loan from the Indian Exim Bank, and what is left for us to get into Burkina is about 700 kilometers. That 700 kilometers will go by an iron ore mine. If you look in your books, if your brochures, it will tell you how much iron ore we have. I think we have about 150 million tons of iron ore. You can't move iron ore if you don't have a train line. And so that alone guarantees us the opportunity to do creative financing on that line. This is the line to Burkina, and we started already laying the tracks. And once again, we have another viaduct. Don't tell anybody that it's just a bridge, okay? And then we started laying the tracks on the line. And can you help me? Because, yeah, okay. And the contractors tell us that we'll finish in in August. But my experience with contractors is that they always give you a reason why, when they said they'll finish in August, they couldn't finish in August. So, they've done about 40% of the work, and all my fingers are crossed the whole day, hoping that they'll meet their target. But this is a first-class modern railway, and we are building it all the way to Burkina Faso. Now, out of our 4,000 kilometers of railway line, I can tell you with confidence that about half of it we are going to build through creative financing, using the railway line itself, using the intended freight off-taker agreements, and also using associated infrastructure around the railway network. If you go to Hong Kong, for example, their metro, money doesn't come from the metro, but 90% of the money comes from real estate around it. And that is what we are seeking to do. Everywhere the railway line goes, there'll be development. And we are going to use that development, what we call the railway economic zones, to build the railway. I am convinced beyond reasonable doubt that there's a possibility of using creative financing to complete this railway line. I will just end by showing you two maps. And when the gentleman comes to stand by you, it's a reminder that you've got to sit down. So there are two maps that I wanted to show you. In 2013, the master plan said we'll finish the railway network in 33 years. After 3 years, from 2017 to today, a new master plan will come out this year. And that master plan says we'll finish the railway network within 15 years. It is all because of creating financing. We are told that there are limitless opportunities in Ghana. My view is that the sector in which there are limitless opportunities is the railway sector. Thank you very much.